Soft ambient underscore, a calm, focused tone, measured pacing with weight in the pauses. Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. When was the last time you truly felt heard? Not just listened to out of politeness, not nodded at while someone checked their phone, but heard deeply, with presence. Like your words mattered, like your voice had weight, like someone actually saw you. For many young men today, that moment is becoming rare, almost extinct. I've spoken to men who are brilliant, passionate, thoughtful, but their voices have grown dim. Not because they lack intelligence or value, but because life taught them something brutal. Speaking doesn't always mean connection. And over time, after enough blank stares, enough awkward silences, enough moments where vulnerability was met with mockery, or worse, indifference, they started to withdraw. First, it's subtle. You edit yourself. You say less. You default to sarcasm or humor or surface-level banter. You stop sharing anything that feels truly meaningful, because when you did, it didn't land. Eventually, you begin to think, maybe it's just not worth it. And here's the real danger. When you stop speaking your truth, when you start living on mute emotionally, your voice might still work, but your soul goes quiet. And that silence, it's not peace, it's isolation. There's a quiet epidemic of men who feel invisible, especially in dating, especially in relationships. Not because they're bad communicators, but because they've been taught that their voice doesn't carry value unless it's witty, charming, or dominant. But communication is not performance. It's not a script. It's not about impressing. It's about revealing. And the reason so many of us aren't being heard is because we've stopped speaking from the place that wants to be known. When you speak only to get something, validation, approval, sex, agreement, you may get attention, but you rarely earn connection. And that's the tragedy. So many men are starving for connection and accidentally pushing it away every time they open their mouths. Because, here's the truth, your voice isn't just what you say, it's how you say it, who you are when you say it, and the space you create around your words. People don't listen with their ears alone. They listen with their nervous systems, their hearts. And they can feel, almost instantly, whether you're showing up as yourself or a version you think they'll accept. If your voice is anxious, if your energy is performative, if your words feel hollow, people instinctively tune out. Not because they're cruel, but because the signal doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel real, and that, right there, is the first silent killer of your voice, disconnection from yourself. Before you can speak powerfully, you have to reconnect, not to the voice in your throat, but to the voice in your gut. The part of you that knows when something is off, the part that wants more than just a one-night stand or a like on your latest story, the part of you that's tired of pretending. You don't need louder words, you need truer presence. Because when you speak with your full self, when you bring honesty, emotion, stillness, breath, people feel it. They lean in because truth is magnetic, presence is rare, and in a world addicted to noise, a grounded voice becomes a lighthouse. So if you feel like you're not being heard, don't shout louder, don't try harder, go quieter, go deeper. Ask yourself, am I speaking to be heard or to be seen? Am I performing or connecting? Am I willing to speak with nothing to prove but everything to give? When you begin to answer those questions, not just with words, but with presence, you'll find something astonishing. People will listen. Not because you demanded it, but because they felt you, and that is the beginning of real power. Ambient music continues a little more tense, reflective. The tone is still calm, but now more deliberate. Now that we've looked at the silence, the feeling of not being heard, let's talk about what happens when we try to speak, but unconsciously sabotage ourselves. There are habits, patterns, reflexes we've picked up from the world around us, from media, school, peers, even family, that creep into our speech like mold. And over time, they kill connection. They push people away. They slowly drain the life from our relationships. I call them the 7 deadly sins of speaking. Not sins in a religious sense, but relational sins, emotional ones. Subtle, common, and deeply destructive. The first is gossip. When we speak about people who aren't in the room, especially with judgment or mockery, we damage 2 things: our integrity and the listener's trust. Even if someone laughs at your gossip, they know, deep down, you might speak about them the same way. And in relationships, especially romantic ones, gossip signals immaturity. It shows you lack the courage to confront and the depth to process. Real men speak to, not about. Then there's judgment. Judgment creates separation. It's saying, I am above you. I am right, you are wrong. And while it might give a quick hit of superiority, it shuts down vulnerability instantly. Women, friends, even your inner circle, no one feels safe when every word might be measured, scored, or dismissed. Now the third one is subtle, negativity, the constant drip of complaint, sarcasm, or doom. Negativity may feel like truth, telling, but often it's a shield, a way to avoid hope or effort or risk. If every conversation you have pulls energy down, people will start to pull away. The fourth sin is complaint. Now this one is tricky, because sometimes we do need to name what isn't working. But chronic complaint, especially when it's passive and powerless, destroys attraction. In dating, constant complaining says, I don't take ownership of my world. Women are drawn to presence, not perfection, but responsibility. If you're always blaming the algorithm, your ex, the world, you're avoiding the man in the mirror. Sin 5 is excuses. This is the voice of escape, the subtle refusal to own mistakes, to say, I messed up, to be human. Excuses are walls we build to protect our ego, but every wall also keeps out intimacy. And when you're always explaining why something isn't your fault, people stop trusting you. Now we move into distortion, exaggeration, when your stories always have to be bigger, when your jokes go too far, when your life is always amazing. Or the worst, it becomes difficult to know who you really are. Exaggeration may grab attention, but it costs credibility. And in a world of filters and false confidence, what people crave most is real. And finally, the 7th sin, dogmatism. This is when opinions become facts, when we stop listening and start preaching. It's not just about being right, it's about needing to be right at all costs, and nothing shuts down connection faster than certainty with no curiosity. When you speak like you already know everything, there's no room for others to show up, to offer insight, to meet you in the middle. Now here's the hardest truth of all. We've all done these, every one of us, myself included. These sins aren't shameful. They're human, but if left unchecked, they rot your voice from the inside out. So the question becomes, which one of these do you fall into when you're scared? When you feel insecure, when you're trying to impress, because that's when they show up the most, not when we're confident, but when we're desperate to be accepted. And that's where the real work begins, not in editing your speech, but in healing your fear. When you clear these habits, when you replace gossip with truth, judgment with empathy, negativity with vision, something amazing happens. Your voice begins to resonate. People lean in. You stop chasing attention and start earning trust. And that, in dating, in brotherhood, in leadership, is priceless. Ambient sound softens, gentle, spacious. A stillness in the pacing. The voice becomes more intimate, focused. Let's pause for a moment and talk about something we all take for granted. Your voice, not just the sounds that come out of your mouth, but your energetic fingerprint, your audible identity, the instrument through which your inner world meets the outer one. You see, your voice is so much more than words. It carries emotion, intention, truth, or the lack of it. It is the bridge between your thoughts and your connection to others. And when that bridge is cracked, when your voice no longer reflects who you are, people feel the disconnect. Even if they can't name it, they feel it. Now, most men have never been taught to explore their voice. We're taught to speak clearly, maybe to be confident, sure, but rarely to be resonant, rarely to be felt. Resonance is not about sounding deep or powerful. It's not some performance trick, it's alignment. It's when your breath, your posture, your emotion, and your words are all flowing in the same direction. When you speak not at people, but with them, not to impress, but to express something honest. Think about the people you respect most, not the loudest, not the most clever, but the ones who made you feel safe. Seen, I'd wager their voices had presence, stillness, warmth. That's resonance. It's what happens when you come home to yourself and let that version of you do the speaking. But here's the problem. Most of us are out of tune, disconnected, rushed, tight in the throat, numb in the body. Our voices ride on shallow breath, anxious thought, and emotional noise, and the result, we sound ungrounded. People don't know what to make of us because we're not even sure who we're being in that moment. So let me offer this. If you want to reclaim your authentic voice, you have to slow down. You have to listen to yourself, not just the words, but the energy beneath the words. Ask yourself right now, when I speak, do I feel open or tense? Do I breathe fully? Do I speak from my chest, my throat, or from my gut? Do I rush to fill space, or do I allow silence to breathe with me? These questions aren't just technical, they're emotional, because the way you speak reflects the way you live. A tight voice often belongs to a man carrying unspoken grief. A loud voice may hide fear of not being taken seriously. A voice that never pauses may be terrified of not being enough. But when you begin to listen to your body, your breath, your tone, you begin to reclaim your story. You stop speaking to escape silence and start speaking from a place of stillness. That's when your voice starts to resonate, not just in people's ears, but in their nervous systems, because energy doesn't lie, and presence is felt before a single word is understood. So here's what I want you to remember. Your voice, your true, grounded, resonant voice, has been there the whole time. It's not something you have to invent. It's something you return to. Speak from the body, not just the head. Speak from breath, not just habit. Speak from clarity, not from performance, because when you speak like that, people don't just listen. They trust you, they feel you, and in a world full of noise, that kind of voice, it changes everything. Ambient sound softens even more. The tone becomes raw, intimate. A pause, a breath. There's a moment in every man's life when he realizes that being understood feels far more powerful than being admired. And yet, for years, we're taught to do the opposite. We're trained to chase admiration, achievement, strength, status, so we learn how to speak to impress, to be funny, smart, clever, loud when we think we need to be, silent when we're afraid to show weakness. But here's the truth, and it might sting a little. You can't connect with someone while wearing a mask. You might get attention, you might get approval, you might even get laid, but you won't feel known. And over time, that emptiness builds. It builds in dating. It builds in friendships. It builds in the quiet moments when you wonder why no one really sees you. It builds because you've been performing instead of revealing. And that's the difference between speaking from the outside in and the inside out. When you speak from the outside in, your words are shaped by the audience. What do they want to hear? How do I sound confident? Will this make me look good? That voice might be smooth, polished, controlled, but it's disconnected because it's not built on truth. It's built on strategy. And people, especially women, feel the difference. You don't connect by saying the right thing. You connect by saying the real thing. Now, when you speak from the inside out, something shifts. You speak not to win, but to share. You speak not to prove, but to relate. You speak with the courage to be human. That might mean saying, I don't know. It might mean admitting that hurt. It might mean opening your heart without knowing how it will land. And that takes emotional courage. We've been taught that emotion is weakness, that showing it makes us less of a man. But the opposite is true. Emotion is not chaos. It's not loss of control. Emotion is information. It's data from the deepest parts of your experience. When you numb that, when you armor yourself with logic and sarcasm and silence, your voice becomes hollow. No matter how good the words are, and if your words don't carry your truth, then people can't find you inside them. You may have been told to be stoic, to stay in control, to never let them see you sweat. But I promise you, there is nothing more magnetic, nothing more trustworthy, nothing more masculine than a man who can speak his truth with clarity, calm, and depth. Not drama, not overexposure, but emotionally grounded honesty, the kind that doesn't ask for pity, but also doesn't pretend everything's fine. Because the moment you speak with emotion, not as a tactic, but as a reflection of your actual experience, people feel safe with you. They feel invited. They feel like they can drop their walls too. And that's where real intimacy lives. Not just romantic intimacy, but human intimacy. So ask yourself, when I speak, am I showing my heart? Am I speaking from the inside out? Or am I hiding behind words that keep me comfortable, but alone? You don't need the perfect line. You need the true one, because people don't fall in love with what's impressive. They fall in love with what's real. And when you speak from that place, you stop trying to be someone they'll like, and you become someone they can finally see. Subtle, steady ambient sound. The tone becomes slightly more instructional now, but still intimate, still human. A tone of gentle guidance. So far, we've explored the emotional landscape, the weight of not being heard, the habits that sabotage us, the power of resonance, the courage to speak from the inside out. But now, let's get practical. Because even with the deepest insight, practice is what transforms everything. We don't speak better just by thinking differently. We speak better by doing differently moment by moment, word by word. This is what I call conscious speaking. And it begins with a simple truth. Your voice is not just what you say, it's how you live. And so, the first practice is awareness. Before you speak, pause, just for a beat, a breath. Ask yourself, why am I about to say this? Am I reacting or responding? Am I trying to connect or control? That tiny moment of awareness can change everything. It allows you to speak from choice, not from habit. Because most people speak on autopilot. They fill silence, they defend, they impress. But when you become aware, your words become intentional. They carry weight, they create trust, which brings us to the next practice, listening, strange right. We're talking about speaking, and I'm telling you to listen. But this is essential. Listening is the foundation of powerful speaking. If you want to be heard, you must first hear. When someone speaks to you, especially someone you care about, stop preparing your reply. Just listen fully with presence, because the quality of your listening determines the depth of their sharing. And when you become a man who listens not to fix, not to argue, not to win, but to understand, people feel safe with you. That safety is trust, And trust is the doorway to connection. Now the third practice, pacing, slow down. So many of us rush. We fill space with noise. We speak in bullets. But here's what I want you to remember. Silence is part of the music. A well-placed pause can speak louder than a clever sentence. It lets your words land. It lets the other person catch up, emotionally and mentally. And more than that, when you're not afraid of silence, you show you're comfortable with yourself. And that is deeply attractive, deeply trustworthy. Now fourth, honesty without ego. This is the difference between being real and being raw. You don't have to expose every wound or spill every emotion to be honest, but you do need to speak what's real. That means saying, I don't know, that hurt, here's what I really want, I'm nervous right now, not for sympathy, not to manipulate, but to let the other person meet the real you. And when you speak like that, calm, honest, unarmored, you become a man people can trust with their truth too. Finally, the fifth practice, congruence, your body, your tone, your words, they all need to match. If you say, I'm fine, while your eyes are cold and your voice is tight, people feel the mismatch. And when your energy doesn't match your words, trust evaporates. Congruence isn't about being perfect, it's about being authentic. Let your tone carry your care. Let your posture reflect your presence. Let your words reveal your inner world, not disguise it. Because when everything lines up, when your voice is whole and undivided, it resonates, and resonance builds trust without force. So awareness, listening, pacing, honesty, congruence, these aren't techniques to get something. They are practices that help you become someone. Someone who doesn't speak for attention, but speaks with intention. Someone who doesn't just know how to say the right things, but knows how to be real consistently. And when you live and speak from that place, you stop wondering why people don't trust you. Because they do. Naturally, deeply, you become someone whose voice has presence. And that, in dating, in love, in leadership, is priceless. The music shifts slow, stirring, spacious, a tone of quiet confidence. The voice, firm but warm, begins. There's one thing I want to leave you with, one truth that, if you let it land, could reshape how you show up in every room, every relationship, every part of your life. Being heard is not about volume, it's about value, and not the value other people assign to you, not the validation you chase from dates or likes or admiration, but the value you assign to yourself, because until you believe your voice matters, you will keep shrinking it. You'll keep second guessing, you'll keep trying to impress instead of express, you'll keep waiting for permission, for someone to finally say, you're enough, you can speak now. But that moment never comes because the permission has to come from within. You speaking begins with self-regard. Not arrogance, not entitlement, but the deep, grounded knowing that I am worth listening to. My thoughts have weight. My truth has a place in this world. And that kind of knowing. That takes courage, not fake confidence, not a puffed-up chest or smooth lines, but real, quiet, earned courage. The kind that comes from sitting with your story, even the painful parts. The kind that comes from healing the silence inside you. From owning your emotions without drowning in them. From learning how to speak with strength without needing to dominate. See, the highest. You men I've ever known didn't need to raise their voice. They didn't need to posture or perform, because their words were already built on something solid. Clarity, presence, integrity, stillness. They spoke like every word mattered, not to sell, not to seduce, but to serve, to connect, to lead, to love. And here's what I want you to know. That man, that voice, that you, it's already in there. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need a better script. You don't need to play a role to be powerful. You just need to peel back the noise. Step out of the old habits and speak from the quiet, honest, powerful place inside you. That's what people are starving for. Not more noise, not more opinions, not more charm. They're starving for truth, for realness, for the kind of voice that doesn't just pass through their ears, but stays with them. That lingers, that moves something, that reminds them who they are too. So ask yourself now, and really ask, what would it mean to speak like I matter? What would it take to stop hiding? What would shift if I chose presence over performance? Because that choice, that daily, deliberate, grounded choice, is what separates the loud from the listened to. And if you want to be heard, not just heard, but felt, then your voice must come from something deeper than desire. It must come from conviction, from alignment, from the man who no longer waits for permission because he knows he's already worth listening to. That's the voice of a high value man, and it's yours whenever you choose to speak from it. Ambient music gently swells, slow, reflective. A final breath. If something in this spoke to you, if something inside you stirred, even just a little, don't let that moment pass. Sit with it, speak from it. Let this be the start of something real, because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs your voice, honest, rooted, human, not louder, just truer. And if you're ready to grow that voice, to become the kind of man who speaks not to be impressive, but to be impactful, then this is the space for you. We go deep here, we cut through the surface, we talk about what really matters. So if this meant something to you like this video, leave a comment. Tell me how this landed, what you're struggling with, or even just one line of truth you needed to hear. Share this with someone who needs to reclaim his voice. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, not just to follow a channel, but to commit to this journey, this practice, this return to self, because you are not broken, you are not invisible. You are not too late. Your voice matters, and the world needs to hear it. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, speak truth, live deep, be heard.